David had already been married once before he met Ashley. His first wife had run off with a soldier she'd bumped into at a restaurant, leaving both David and their child behind without so much as a second thought. That betrayal left him convinced he'd never be able to love again. But life has a funny way of turning expectations upside down. At some point, he felt that electric jolt of love all over again. Ashley was 23, fresh out of college, and struggling to find a job. Every firm or company she applied to turn her down for being too young and inexperienced. It stung, especially because she took her work seriously and had done tons of practical training in summer jobs. One day, she sat on a park bench, tears streaming down her face after yet another rejection, when David happened to walk by with his daughter. He saw Ashley crying, and his heart twisted with sympathy. He walked over to ask if she was okay. That was how their story began. Ashley explained the disastrous job interview, how potential employers laughed at her claims of competence. She was so tired of hearing the same line about needing more experience. Meanwhile, David's daughter, Alyssa, gave Ashley a little drawing she had made in a cafe just before they arrived at the park. Ashley clutched that drawing like it was the most precious thing on earth. At the time, David owned a small business, a children's learning center. He realized the administrator job wasn't exactly in line with Ashley's skill set, but still offered her a temporary gig. She accepted because she really had no choice. She was alone, broke, new in town, and needed anything she could get. David found himself quietly smitten with her. He would bring her flowers at work, show up during lunch with warm pastries and fragrant coffee. After a while, he worked up the courage to ask her on a proper date. Ashley said yes without hesitation. She had already found David appealing from that moment in the park when he approached her bench. Their connection grew steadily stronger. Within 6 months, they were living together, and a year after that, David proposed. Even he was taken aback by his own decision. Not too long ago, he had been convinced he would never let anyone into his heart again. Time marched on. David's daughter, Alyssa, was practically all grown up. That year, she was finishing high school and planned to head off to a big university in the city. Her relationship with her stepmother was wonderful. Ashley had become a true mother figure to her, something Alyssa mentioned often. Meanwhile, David's little business was flourishing, and Ashley kept working for him. She had tried at one point to find a position in her university field, but realized it didn't spark much joy after all. David was thrilled to have such a capable partner at his side. Only recently, they had opened a brand new location for the center. Ashley stayed on as its temporary administrator, ensuring everything ran smoothly while David branched out into a new venture. For a while, the children's centers were effectively under Ashley's control. She turned out to be a great boss, though she often ended up staying late into the evening, because older kids' classes, including English lessons, ran after regular hours. The English teacher was a young man who initially impressed Ashley with his skill, but soon she found herself physically drawn to him. She tried to push away all thought of Mike. She wasn't the cheating type, but every time she saw him, her imagination would conjure up some very explicit scenes. Mike, for his part, seemed to sense exactly what she was thinking. He would compliment her, show interest in her life, ask how she was doing. Then one evening, after the day's last class had ended and everyone else had gone, he kissed her. Ashley felt 1,000 fireworks go off in her head. It was thrilling, yes, but also terribly shameful. She was enjoying the kiss of a man who wasn't her husband. While her budding romance with Mike heated up, her marriage with David went downhill. David was swamped with stress from expanding his new business, and his worn-down mood grated on Ashley. In her mind, she drew comparisons. David was older, exhausted, preoccupied, whereas Mike was carefree, young, fun, and handsome. She found David lacking whenever she lined him up next to Mike. David couldn't understand why his wife had become so irritable, why she had turned almost overnight from a patient, gentle spirit to a fury who picked fights for no reason. He kept trying to figure out what was going on. One day, while sitting in his office waiting for a partner to show up for a meeting, David had a random thought. Why not check the security cameras at the location Ashley managed? He knew there were evening lessons scheduled, meaning Ashley should be there until late. He logged into the feed, but saw no one on screen. Odd, because the session was still supposed to be in progress. Confused, he clicked through cameras in different rooms. When he switched to the back storage area, he saw Ashley there, kneeling in front of some kid. David froze. He started recording the feed, then dropped his head into his hands, pressing so hard on his closed eyes that colors danced in the darkness. He felt the world around him collapse. In that instant, it all made sense. Why Ashley had changed so drastically, why she was constantly picking fights. He canceled his meeting, saved the video to a flash drive, and headed home. She was already there, waiting like any normal evening. She greeted him with a quick kiss on the cheek. David recoiled. All he could see was that camera footage playing on a loop in his head. He felt nauseous, and yet he couldn't bring himself to confront her that night. He lay awake, tossing and turning, until an idea began to form in his mind. One that initially horrified him, but then struck him as the perfect revenge. He decided to plan a small celebration under the guise of toasting to the success of his new venture. Secretly, David arranged for a banquet hall with a TV, instructing the staff to play a certain clip from his USB stick at just the right moment. The price was steep, but David didn't care. He wanted to humiliate his cheating wife publicly. Ashley, clueless, spent the evening chattering away, showing David pictures Alyssa had sent from college, telling him about her day at work. Then David proposed a toast to her. He stood up with a glass, began a short speech, and that's when the screens around the room lit up with the security footage from the Children's Center, capturing Ashley in the back room with Mike. Shock overwhelmed her. She burst into tears and ran out. Their divorce was bitter and prolonged. They fought over property. Ashley tried sabotaging David's deals, then swung back to beg his forgiveness, and so on in a messy cycle. By the time it all ended, David felt a massive weight lift. Meanwhile, Alyssa lost any trace of admiration for Ashley, severing all ties with her. Mike ditched Ashley the second he realized how complicated their affair had become. He blocked her everywhere and didn't even return to work. Ashley ended up buying a small apartment, but she never seemed to recapture the happiness she had felt the day she first met David. That one betrayal cost her everything, and there was no turning back time.